In 1986, we got the Steve Miner directed House. At times wacky and adventurous, but rooted in the prime of practical effects of 80s horror. We had standouts like the great George Wendt, Bull himself, Mr. Richard Mall, and leading the pack, the always charming William Katt, along with that solid-looking, deep, it's not just great. It's amazing. Yeah, but like any success in the film business, a sequel is ordered, and let me tell you, it is one worth discussing. A flick starring a plethora of great 80s working actors like Ari Gross, Lar Park Lincoln, Dwyer Brown, and John Ratzenberger. So today I want to discuss not only one of the better and slightly underappreciated sequels out there, but more specifically, the one scene that defined it. I'm Lance Vlcek for JoBlo Horror Originals. And this is House 2, the second story. There was a bit of a sequel trend during my childhood that would take a more serious first entry and make the second slightly more, fun? You know, I'm not sure if that's the correct word here, but the tone would lighten up a bit and things would step away from the darker nature of the original. This took on many forms. Think Conan the Destroyer, Gremlins 2, Ghostbusters 2, Waxwork 2, Evil Dead 2. All great entries in their own right, and this isn't a stab at why those don't work, because they do. House 2 has its heart in the realm of horror comedy, but embraces more of the fantasy/adventure elements that give it its own flavor. Replacing the menacing Big Ben, we now have the outlaw Slim. And adding a bit of warmth and soul to the story, we have the undead great-great-grandfather, Gramps.
Don't call me sir, I ain't no politician.
Jesse and best friend Charlie replaced the solo Roger Cobb here, and both skip into different periods of space and time, giving the adventure moniker I mentioned earlier. But in a movie with a mischievous baby pterosaur, virgins sacrificing Aztecs, and a puppy pillar, or dog pillar, maybe cat or puppy, I don't know. But the thing is adorable, and if you don't agree, then we can't see eye to eye on what brings us joy in this cold, dark world. I mean, the scene where Gramps puts a beer in the baby's bottle and actually feeds it is, it's a classic. No arguments allowed. Now, with so much going on here, what could be the defining scene? The rug that ties the proverbial room together. Well, like most things in life, all roads lead here. And by here, I mean cheers. In a strange but great continuation of using actors from the classic TV show, we get a scene-stealing moment with the man himself, Mr. John Ratzenberger. Early in the movie, Jesse, played by Ari Gross, mentions to Kate, played by Lar Park Lincoln, about how one of the light switches is broken, and so everything along that wall is out of commission, leading to the eventual entrance of the electrician. Now, of course, the timing is bad, since Gramps was robbed of the all-powerful skull. That, of course, must always be protected. Jesse and Charlie need to head into the fireplace portal to retrieve it, but just wouldn't you know it, electrician Bill Towner shows up and, as a man who respects the demands of the job, is here to get that light switch fixed and be damned if his arrival is an inconvenience.
But this really isn't the right time.
I'm not going to get in your way. You just show me what needs fixing.
I mean, just the deadpan tone and the aloofness of Bill make him instantly iconic. I mean, the man walks in and is firing on all cylinders. He accidentally breaks an art piece, and before Jesse can even say something, he quips.
I wouldn't worry about that, Jess. Didn't look too valuable.
Bill is giving the speech on why he's the best, the issues at hand, and clearly leading to a point when...
Must be foreign made.
All of this is in service of a bit. One that the movie nails with flawless precision. I mean, he uses Jesse's name so many times you think he would be asserting dominance.
Hey, that's all right, Jess. It's the room you having problems here with, Jess? Jess, you got a problem here. I'm gonna fix this old house up for you, Jess. Could go either way, Jess. Jess.
House 2 leans heavier into the comedy this time around, so this whole part doesn't feel out of place. No. It's right in line with the tone and style. You see, we're meant to think that Bill's an idiot here to fumble Jesse's retrieval of the all-important skull. I mean, Bill seems confused about this loose wall socket, only to make a giant hole in the process, leading to everything that makes House 2 great. you see the unnecessary hole he made. Well, Bill knows what's up. Jess and Charlie got some kind of alternate universe or something, and of course, and he's been through this kind of thing before. He is a professional. And so the Mr. Magoo of electricians grabs his secret sword, which is awesome, and heads into the void to help out his customers with a bit of a problem. Ratzenberger encapsulates why House 2 is an underrated cult classic with this entire scene. He plays it completely straight in just when you think he couldn't get any dumber.
You go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself!
You see, Bill jumps right into the action, kicking ass and taking names. Not an ounce of fear on this guy. The boys save the stunning virgin, played by heartbreaker Devin DeVasquez, while Bill puts himself in the front of the line of fire to save the day. You see, he stays behind to protect his clients. And I'm going to tell you something, if that is not customer service, I don't know what is. And here's the cherry on top. Bill Towner is not only already out of danger, of course he took care of it, but he was getting a bit concerned about the tardiness of his friends. Bill then shakes Jesse's hand, saying his name one last time. But with a bit of hesitation, as if he's not even sure if that's his name, as if he didn't say it 30 times prior.
I'd really like to thank you for inviting me along, Jess.
That's because Bill is more than a low-key worker trying to make ends meet. No. Bill's also an adventurer. One that always puts his focus on the job. Oh, and one that didn't see the need to fix the lights before leaving.
Smoke weed every day.
It's everything that makes House 2 iconic and special, all wrapped up in a single yet inventive scene. I mean, hell, Bill is a Halloween costume in the making, if you will.
Bill Towner, electrician.
Stay tuned, because I'll have Brian Wolford's and Nikki Minter's review attached at the end of this. I'm Lance Vlcek, and appreciate you guys hanging out as we delve into the quintessential scene of House 2. Now take care, and as always, remember to tip your waitresses and bartenders. Until next time.
Sayonara.
With the success of House, producer Sean Cunningham was eager to push a sequel forward ASAP. He went to the same domestic and foreign distributors he had used on the first one, and they were very happy with the idea. With guarantees in hand, he approached the writer of the original, Ethan Wiley, about creating another film. Wiley was on board with one request. He wanted to direct the sequel. Sean agreed but had a condition of his own. He needed a script in 2 weeks. Wiley would agree and then set out to create what would become a surreal sequel to a straightforward horror comedy film. Let's revisit House 2, the second story.
Nice hearing from you, Carlos.
Cunningham had told Wiley that none of the original cast would be returning. Since the first film had done so well, the idea was that they would be asking for more money. Ever the shrewd producer, he wanted to keep the cost of the film down and get back as much in profits as possible. They were trying to figure out how they could come up with a new story but keep it tied to the first film. The idea of maybe bringing back the villain of the first film, Big Ben, was thrown around, but in the end, they decided it wouldn't make any sense for him to be terrorizing a new group of characters. Wiley decided to do away with any connectivity whatsoever, but still use the house umbrella to tell a new story. A new house, a new story, and a new set of characters. With this, they weren't beholden to any of the story rules or situations in the first film and could tell any kind of story they wanted. Nothing was off the table. He eventually came up with an idea that lent itself more towards a reality and time-traveling story than a straight-up haunting. In the movie, Jesse inherits an old mansion that used to belong to his biological parents. When he was a baby, they were murdered. He moves in with his friend Charlie and his girlfriend Kate. They begin to go through the old things in the house and find some old pictures of the great-great-grandfather with a crystal skull. Logically deducing that it was probably buried with him, they decide to go dig up his casket. Cool.
Let's go for it.
Once open, they find the once dead Gramps has now been reanimated. Jesse reveals his familial connection and Gramps welcomes him with open arms. They take Gramps back to the house and listen as he tells them all sorts of stories about the Old West and how he found the crystal skull. He warns them of the power of the skull and that the house was built using the stones of an old Aztec temple. With the crystal skull, each room can become a doorway across time and space. But with this, it also draws enemies from these places who want to claim the power of the skull themselves. Okay, let's keep going. This leads the guys into crossing over into different worlds while trying to protect the crystal skull. Eventually, it leads them into a showdown with the Old West with Gramps' old partner Slim. Even when he was still alive, he wanted the skull for himself, and not even death will keep him from it. This film seems to get scoffed at by fans of the original film, but is actually a delightful, fun adventure film. The filmmakers decided to focus less on the horror content of the first film and more on the quirky comedy aspect. This leads to a fun film that takes viewers on all kinds of adventures. You get tastes of a prehistoric world, an Aztec temple where they interrupt the sacrifice of a virgin, and end up in a shootout with an undead gunfighter in the Old West. Meanwhile, they end up gathering friends from each of these adventures, creating a unique gang of misfits living in this house. I seriously want my own cat or puppy. When it came to assembling his production team, Wiley went back to some of his old friends and was able to gather some of the best special effects team imaginable at the time. Wiley had spent years before working in the area of special effects. He'd worked with Chris Walius on Gremlins a few years before. On a phone call to Walius, he ran down what the story was and what he would need. Walius had just worked on David Cronenberg's The Fly the year before and was highly in demand, but agreed to help Wiley with his directorial debut. When he read the full script, he knew they were in for a lot of work hours on very little money. For Gramps, Walius decided that even though he was a reanimated corpse, they had to endear the character to the audience. He opted to use the colors blue, white, and gray in the makeup. He compared it to the same color schemes as Casper the Friendly Ghost. Weirdly, it does give the character a warm feeling, making you wish he was your undead great-great-grandpa that would tell you stories of the Old West. In contrast, when we meet the character of Slim, we see that the character has a lot of reds infused in its look. The obvious is the red mustache and long hair, but also there are subtle tones of reds and oranges in their makeup, giving it a gross look. The creation of the cat or puppy actually went a long way back to Wiley's time at Walius' studio. He had been doodling and ended up drawing a creature with a caterpillar body with a dog head. It was hung up around the shop, and occasionally the crew would talk about it and laugh at the idea. When Wiley was thinking up ideas of weird stuff to put in the film, he thought that the cat or puppy might be a fun thing to put in it. Walius thought the idea of the cat or puppy was a terrible idea. He thought it was too weird and no one would like it. But he cleaned up the design, and when it premiered, people loved this creature. I mean, you've seen it.
That was well put, son. Now let's eat.
New World Pictures even used it as some pre-advertising for the film. They created tiny figurines of the animal and even sent it out to various outlets to hype the release of the film. Wiley set out to cast the film and wasn't too sure on who to cast as his lead. The director of the first house, Steve Miner, had just worked on a film called Soul Man. If there ever was a film that couldn't be made nowadays, it would be Soul Man. Seriously, if you have no idea, look it up. It deserves its own video called, Why Did This Get Made?
Soul Man. He didn't give up. He got down.
Right on.
In that film, Miner had just worked with a young actor, Ari Gross. He had high praise for the actor and recommended him highly for the part. After he read for Wiley, he knew that he had just found the lead for the film. They loved him, and it was an easy choice. He plays the part of Jesse perfectly, a very rational man who finds himself in completely unbelievable situations. Undead grandparents? Sure. A gateway to the Jurassic era in his house? I mean, why not? A hole in his wall that leads to an Aztec temple? I mean, seems right.
It's like you got some kind of alternate universe in there or something.
His sidekick Charlie was cast with Jonathan Stark. He had an improvisational background with the Groundlings and would bring the carefree attitude his character needed. Plus, he had horror cred having just played the part of Billy Cole on Fright Night. He knew how to mix the comedy with horrific situations, which would work perfectly. For the role of Gramps, they decided that since he's an old-time cowboy, they should hire an older actor from old Western films. Royal Dano came in, everybody on set loved him, and even though he had to deal with long hours in the makeup chair, he never once complained. It brought a good energy to the set. For the role of Bill Towner, they ended up hiring John Ratzenberger. While at least there was no intention of hiring yet another cast member from Cheers since George Wendt was in the first film. It was merely a coincidence, but I did think of a House 3 with Rhea Perlman might have been fun. They found out that Ratzenberger was a classically trained stage actor and had combat training. They use this to their advantage when he wanders into the Aztec temple.
I've been through this kind of thing before. Just don't touch anything till I get there.
We get to see him go to battle as the Aztecs try to swarm our heroes. He pulls a sword out of his toolbox, showing that this isn't his first rodeo. Armed with a hammer and a sword, he is no one to mess with.
Don't worry about me.
He delivers the characters a business card that reads, Bill Towner, electrician and adventurer. Just marvelous. How we didn't get a series of sequels with Bill Towner as the central character is a crime against humanity.
It's not gonna be easy.
Bill Towner will always be my spirit animal. Even though it was a fun movie, the filming of it didn't get by without a few bumps and bruises. Kane Hodder was brought on as a stunt coordinator. The cast and crew praised him for keeping everyone safe during the entire shoot. This is where he met Lar Park Lincoln, who he would face off against in Friday the 13th Part 7. A few things though were out of his control, and he himself ended up getting hurt as well. During the raid on the Aztec temple, when Charlie goes swinging across the set, Hodder himself did the swing. While he said they should put down as much safety equipment as they could, since the stage was elevated about 20 feet off the floor. Hodder said it was a simple swing and should be no problem. When it came time to do the stunt, he swung out and hit the part of the altar. This caused him to begin spiraling on the rope and was eventually thrown off. He fell the 20 feet to the floor and landed on his back. Everyone was terrified he had hurt himself, but ended up just with some bad bruises. Lar Park Lincoln was wearing contacts on the shoot and ended up scratching her cornea. Contacts in the 80s were no joke. So the next day on set, she had only one contact in as she was basically blind without them. Turns out it was the day she was filming the scene where her character storms out of the house. She had to stomp and power walk down multiple flights of stairs and walk past the edge of the camera. With her impaired vision, it made her dizzy. Also during the Aztec temple scene, Devin DeVasquez played the Virgin being sacrificed. As she lay on the altar, the crystal skull prop was put on a small indention just above her head. It ended up falling off and landing right on her face. The prop was pretty heavy and she kept filming even though she had a bad headache. Turns out she got a concussion from it and had to take a few days off. DeVasquez was also in Playboy as the movie was being shot and brought an advanced copy to show everyone. She kept asking Gross if he had seen her pictures yet. He felt it was really awkward to talk to her about seeing naked pictures of her, but finally did. He told her that she had been very blessed with what was given, and hopefully she would put that to good use. She answered that she was giving her blessings to the caterer. When the film was released, it didn't do very well. Some felt it didn't live up to the tone and execution of the first film. It tried to do its own thing and set itself apart from the original. Fans didn't know what to do with the film, and sadly it became the butt of some jokes over the years.
House 2, the second story.
It did find its audience on video and TV, but never got the recognition it deserves. It's a fun adventure romp with some pretty amazing special effects for the time it was made. For as low as the budget was, Wiley was able to wring every drop out of it and present a fun film. For the third film, although not technically called House 3, but that's its own video in the making, they would try to go with a straight horror film with small touches of comedy, and 4 was, all over the place. But 2 deserves the attention it missed in theaters and should be reconsidered as a fun 80s popcorn film. Plus it has Cat or Puppy. How is that not enough for some people? Come on.